Buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en este momento tan importante para nosotros que marca un antes y un después en la historia de la compañía. Somos muchos los que estamos hoy aquí, más de 70 medios, regionales, nacionales, internacionales. Gracias de nuevo a todos los que estáis aquí presentes y vía streaming por vuestro interés en Cepsa y en su futuro. La rueda de prensa que vamos a hacer es sencilla. Vamos a tener una primera exposición por parte de nuestro consejero delegado, Martin Wetzeler, y después haremos una tanda de preguntas que yo mismo moderaré. Antes de ceder la palabra a Martin, quiero recordaros, aunque muchos ya lo sabéis, que Martin se sumó a la compañía a principios de año, tiene una amplia trayectoria internacional, sobre todo en el mundo de las energías sostenibles y renovables, y esa visión que nos trae queda reflejada en esta estrategia ambiciosa y moderna. Martin, tienes la palabra.
Gracias. Hola a todos, bienvenidos. Os pido perdón por la presentación en inglés de hoy. Yo compartiré muchos objetivos hoy. Yo quiero preguntar para vosotros que me ayuda en seguir una presentación en inglés. El objetivo mío propio es de dominar el idioma español a finales de año. Un objetivo que ya estoy trabajando duro en él. Entonces, warm welcome to everybody. Today is a historical moment for Cepsa, the second energy transition that we're part of. 100 years ago, we were there when Cepsa was part of investing in the transition from horse to car. Today, we're in a new energy transition that moves from a fossil fuels-based energy system to a sustainable energy system. Everybody will need to adapt. Consumers of energy, yourselves, companies, producers of energy like ourselves. Today, we will explain how Cepsa will respond to this challenge. We call it our positive motion strategy. Now, why positive motion? Because it sets the tone for all we do going forward. It's not just about carbon. It's about having a net positive impact on all we do. It's about creating positive experiences for our customers, delivering positive solutions to our customers to help them decarbonize their energy usage. And it's about having a positive impact on the world around us, on employment, on energy security, on energy independence, on equal opportunity and diversity, on our neighbors, on our partners. This is a philosophy about having positive impact on anything that touches Cepsa. But it's also to help our customers feel positive about their energy usage, which 100 years ago was natural. The energy transition delivered freedom and cheap and fast mobility to people in the 1920s. Today, many people feel guilty about their energy usage. They drive their car, they take a plane on holiday, aware that there's a carbon problem that they're adding to. We want to develop solutions for people to feel positive about their mobility and their energy usage again by offering them zero impact, zero carbon solutions to go around the world, to heat their homes, to use their energy. And I believe that Cepsa is extremely well placed to take a leading role in that development, and later on I'll explain why. But let's look a little bit at the context of the world as it's changing. Because it is changing. We're in a new era. Climate change has been with us for a number of decades. Rio de Janeiro climate conference in the early 90s already talked about this. But there's been a lot of talk and not so much action. But today the world is changing. The world is actually starting to act on this climate crisis. Consumers and citizens are willing to change their behaviors, are willing to contribute, to open their wallets, to buy an electric vehicle, to isolate their homes, to put a solar panel on the roof. Governments, apart from talking, are taking real action. Ambition policies are being implemented, EU Fit for 55 being a prime example. The financial sector has embraced ESG and climate as a fundamental thesis for its investments and for its loans. And indeed, today's context of the conflict in Ukraine reminds us all of the importance of energy independence and energy security. And digital is changing everything around us. With the power and the speed of digital innovation, whole supply chains are being reinvented, whole industries are being reconfigured. And in that changing world, we need a strategy for the future. The whole energy industry needs a strategy for the future. The net zero commitment is on top of most energy companies in the world. It's certainly on top of my agenda when I joined on 1 January. And actually, it's been on top of my agenda in my previous job at Shell as well. I'm positive that we can reach net zero. Actually, I'm positive that we can go beyond into net positive. If we dive a bit deeper on this climate crisis, there are various scenarios about how the next 30 years could play out. The most conservative one from the International Energy Agency is one called stated policies, where governments essentially enforce the policies that they have today. That will certainly get us into trouble when it comes to climate. And even the one where governments and countries meet their current commitments on climate change will take us well beyond 2 degrees global warming. It's only when we start to live in a world where people increase their commitments, make new ones, not just governments and countries, but also consumers and energy producers, which is called the Sustainable Development Scenario. We're starting to get into a place where the Paris goal of staying below 2 degrees Celsius temperature rise is being achieved. And the 1.5 degree scenario, which is the one that avoids most negative impacts, is the net zero emissions scenario by the IEA. And there is a path towards it, but it's a narrow path. At Cepsa today, we announced a strategy, we announced a climate commitment that aims to be part of the most ambitious scenario that you can imagine, which is a world in positive motion, a world in its way not just to net zero, but to becoming net positive by 2050. That's the world we want to help create. That's the world that we are investing our money in, putting our talent behind, putting our commitment behind. And that is not just a major challenge, it's also a major opportunity. We have decided to, within that challenging outlook, take on the toughest challenge of decarbonization. If you look at the different sectors of energy usage, some of them use exclusively electricity. And they are easier to decarbonize because we know how. With solar, wind, battery, grid investment, we can decarbonize electricity today if we work hard enough on it. On the left-hand side of this graph, you see the industries that need a fuel, that need a molecule to get around. It's industry, heavy industry, but it's also many modes of transport. Not so much the cars that you and I drive, they can be electric, but buses and heavy trucks and planes and ships that go to the other side of the ocean. These modes of transport need a molecular fuel to go around. And there the solution is not as straightforward and not as mature. So Cepsa will take on the challenge of creating green fuels, green molecules in the coming years and decades to bring even these sectors that the IEA expects to still be CO2 emitting by 2070, to bring them to net zero and beyond by 2050. That's the essence of what we are committing to. And is that a big challenge? Yes, but it's also a very big opportunity because it's complex. And we, in Cepsa, are very well placed to deal with that complexity. FTSE Russell, which is one of the agencies that studies and benchmarks investment in the energy transition, estimates that there's a $4 trillion prize for those who are able to meet the fast-growing demand of clean fuels and clean electricity. And at Cepsa, we would quite like to have a bit of that. And we're going to. But more than that, we want to be part of the solution. More than that, we want to be relevant to a changing world. We want to lead the change in the world. And we are extremely well placed, as I said before. Now, why is that? Two reasons. One is, Cepsa is the right size. We are not too big, but also not too small to take on this challenge. We are not too big. We can change fast. We can be nimble. We can try things and pivot. And we can transform this company this decade from where it was yesterday to where it's going to be in 2030. If you're very large, it's hard to do. But we're also not too small. So we have deep technological expertise and technical skills. We can afford to have a very sophisticated approach to ESG. We do have a global footprint. We are relevant to partners. And most importantly, if we put ourselves to it, we can have a significant impact on the energy system by putting our minds, our money, and our people towards decarbonization. So we are ready for this opportunity. Now let me talk a little bit about the company as it is, and the company as it will be. Cepsa today has three very successful businesses. We have an energy business. We have our energy parks that are what we used to call our refineries. We have trading, distribution, marketing, sales of energy. Then we have a chemicals business that is world leading in a number of important and future relevant products. And then we have an E&P business that is a very long life, resilient E&P business with a global footprint. Today, we will focus mostly on the strategy for the energy business, because that's the one we're transforming. That's the one we're taking from where it is today, which is mostly a fossil business, to one that it will be in 2030, and we will talk about that. The E&P and chemicals business have a strong starting point, but also have a strong strategy that is not changing. So we'll talk less about them, but I will touch on the two businesses in a minute. But let me first talk a little bit about the commitments we're making going forward. And of course, central to Positive Motion is the philosophy. The philosophy of Positive Motion is to have a net positive impact on anything we touch. Of course, carbon is a very important element of that. We want to get to net zero and we want to get to net positive on carbon. But as a company, we touch so many more issues in the world, whether it's environment, whether it is indeed broader societal issues. Cepsa in Positive Motion will have a positive impact on anybody that touches the company. But when it comes to energy, what we want to achieve is develop sustainable mobility and sustainable energy solutions that help others get to net zero and beyond. Of course, we need to go there ourselves, but enabling others by making it easy, affordable, and convenient to go green will amplify our impact in a significant way. And if we can get going on that, then we will not just become net positive. We will create a brighter future for all. And that is what Positive Motion sets out to achieve. Now, what does that mean on carbon? Today, we are making a commitment to reduce our own carbon footprint by 55% this decade, before 2030. A very significant intervention in the energy efficiency and the carbon footprint of our own operations. And by developing decarbonization solutions for our customers, we aim to bring their footprint down by 15 to 20% this decade. And both of them targeting net zero before 2050, so we can get into the net positive territory. That's the carbon commitments that this strategy will deliver as implemented. Now, Positive Motion has ESG at its core. It is fundamental to achieving our strategy to have a very, very strongly embedded ESG philosophy in our company. This is not about just having, as we have, very rigorous and advanced policies when it comes to environment, social, governance, ethics, compliance. It's also about embedding them deeply into our enterprise and in everything we do. It's about rewarding our people for progress. 15 to 25% of the bonus of Cepsa depends on ESG progress. It's about linking it all the way through our value chain, making sure our suppliers and our customers equally adopt similar ESG targets and measures so that the whole value chain becomes sustainable. And we're very proud of our efforts in transparency. The integrated management report that we publish meets the highest international standards as they exist today. And we don't have to do that. We're a private company. But we want to do it because we believe that transparency, what we do, is essential in positive motion, is essential in connecting to society in the way that society expects us to connect to them, and in order to learn from all the feedback that this transparency gives us. When we benchmark ourselves, and we asked a company called Sustainalytics to benchmark ESG efforts across the industry, across the oil and gas industry, we came out #1. And we're proud of that ranking, but it also makes it uneasy. We need to keep raising the bar. When you're #1, you better beat your own record every year in order to stay on top. And we're very proud this year to, again, 7 years in a row, be a top employer in Spain. So ESG is well on its way in Cepsa, but we will continue to raise the bar every year in the spirit of positive motion. Now let me talk a little bit more in detail about the way we are going to transform our energy business. We're creating an ecosystem of progress, which starts with the 2 businesses that we have created as per the beginning of this year. We have mobility and new commerce, and we have commercial and clean energies. Looking at the 2 sides of this ecosystem, essentially we're servicing the B2C customers and the B2B customers with their decarbonization challenges, and providing clean energy solutions and clean mobility solutions to those customers. But that energy needs to be produced by someone, and that's where the energy parks come in. I'll talk about it later, but the 2 energy parks that we have in Andalusia are extremely well placed to become sustainable energy infrastructure elements of the future. So they will produce that clean energy that we're going to sell to our customers. And the last but not least element of this ecosystem is partners. More than ever before, we cannot travel this journey alone. The energy transition and the kind of progress we want to make this decade requires partnerships. Industrial, commercial, but also civil society partnerships to go together on this journey towards a brighter future. That's what the ecosystem that we will be creating. Let me dive a bit deeper on the mobility and new commerce side of this. Essentially the station network, the 1,800 stations that Cepsa runs today. In that we are going to build the leading ultra-fast on-the-go charging network in Spain and Iberia. Spain and Portugal, be better. Once we get going, we will build 20 ultra-fast chargers per week in that network, aiming to, this decade, create a network that connects all the main cities with 200 kilometers or less distance between Cepsa chargers. So you never have to worry about range. Particularly because it is part of an ecosystem of e-mobility where we partner with Endesa to have a 360-degree charging experience for our joint customers. At home, destination, on the go, there will always be an e-mobility charging opportunity from this network close to you. That will be the largest e-mobility network in Iberia by a mile. Now we're also committed to decarbonizing heavy road transport, where we realize that big trucks going all the way to North Europe can't electrify. They have a choice then between transporting the battery or the cargo, but you can't transport both. And that's where hydrogen comes in for the first time in the story. We believe the future of heavy trucking, heavy transport is in hydrogen, and we will lead in Spain, in Portugal, with building a hydrogen network up to 100 stations this decade that connects all the main transport corridors and offers hydrogen refueling every 300 kilometers, which will give confidence to the industries to start committing to and transforming to hydrogen. And finally, we will offer mobility as a service. What does that mean? We will offer cars or with batteries or trucks with hydrogen with everything included. The energy, the price just on a per kilometer charge. We're aiming to develop business models where it becomes extremely convenient for our customers to simply take a hydrogen truck on a per kilometer basis or take an electric vehicle on a per kilometer basis, and together with our partners, We look after everything behind the scenes. This is making it convenient for our customers to go down the energy transition to net zero. I talked about our 1,800 stations, and we will transform them as part of this strategy. Transform them from places where today you have to go to fill up, otherwise you can't drive, to a place where you want to be, where you actually be disappointed when your charging runs out, because there's such convenient locations for you to do your grocery shopping, to collect your click and collect purchase that you made online and you have them delivered through our service stations, where you can enjoy food for now, fresh food for now, food for later, that will be used as basis for the kind of newcomers, last mile deliverers, to use our stores and to use our kitchen to deliver to your home the groceries or the fresh food that you need. And of course there'll be car washes, and of course there'll be energy. There'll be clean electricity and hydrogen and LPG and traditional fuels. There'll be pharmacies. This will be a convenience experience that feels a bit more like an airline lounge than a fuel station. That's the transition that we're going to get through. And if we do this well, and we will do it well, our EBITDA from non-energy will grow 5 times in this decade from where it is today. A large opportunity. Now, that physical transition will also have a digital layer, obviously. As we get a lot closer to our customers, as we deliver more needs for them, we need a digital environment that they can be part of. We're going to spend close to $100 million in the next 3 years to build an absolutely world-class, first-grade digital environment aimed at our customers, where we can personalize the offers for you, where we can actually make your Cepsa experience a personal experience. Because we know what you need, we know what you have had delivered to us that you forgot to pick up last week, or what you bought from us last week when you were near the Cepsa site at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and we can remind you that we have something discounted offer that is relevant to you. Making it a very personal experience requires a very, very sophisticated digital layer, which is the one we will build, using a data-driven culture, using the data scientists that we are very happy to have work for us today. A lot of our growth in the non-energy space will come from having this digital advantage that we are creating today. Now let me talk about the other side of that ecosystem, the sustainable energy side. We have many deep, year-long, in many cases even decades-long relationships with customers in the marine business, in the aviation business, in the industry business, in heavy transport. And all those customers have, in their boardrooms, discussions about how are we going to decarbonize. And we want to become their partners. We will become their partners, offering them decarbonization solutions, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's biofuels, whether it's even clean power. We will mix those solutions and agree with them how to go down a decarbonization journey together. Let me talk first about hydrogen. Because Spain has some unique advantages when it comes to green hydrogen that we will stand up and realize, not just for ourselves, but for our customers and for the country. Andalusia, which is where our 2 energy parks are based, has the cheapest solar system in all of Europe and a very competitive one in the world. And it matters when it comes to green hydrogen, because 75% of the cost of that molecule is power. So if you are in the place that has the cheapest green power in Europe, you're obviously going to produce the cheapest green hydrogen in Europe. And that can become not just a source of decarbonization for ourselves or for our customers in Spain, but actually for Europe. There's also a strong network of customers there. 40% of Spain's hydrogen is consumed in Andalusia. So we can get going with our neighbors, with our own demand, and then grow from there. It's also a maritime hub. Think of the Strait of Gibraltar. A lot of ships pass through, and all those shipping companies are discussing, do they need green methanol, do they need green ammonia, green hydrogen? We'll produce all of it and have maritime offerings to our customers from this place. And finally, that place is better positioned than any place in Europe to become the hub for importing and exporting green hydrogen. If Andalusia is a good place to make green hydrogen, then think of North Africa. And think of the pipeline connections that will evolve over time, that will be created from North Africa into Spain, and then from Spain into North Europe. Again, we are in the right place to create that opportunity and to become a huge player in an internationally traded global green hydrogen network, leveraging the very advantaged starting point that we have. So what we will do? We will offer a full range of decarbonization solutions to our maritime customers, our road customers, and our industry customers based on green hydrogen. And obviously, we will convert our own hydrogen consumption to green hydrogen by the end of this decade. Today, we commit to stopping using grey hydrogen by 2030. So our own use will be decarbonized and that of our customers. In order to get there, we will create 2 gigawatts of hydrogen production in our energy parks, in and around our energy parks, partly distributing it to the 100 hydrogen stations that we're planning to have by the end of the decade. And of course, we will develop those import and export routes to North Africa, to the Middle East, and back into Europe. But hydrogen can't do the work by itself. There are also sectors that need a fuel that's actually a fuel at room temperature. Aviation is a great example. It's very hard to decarbonize aviation in any different way than through biofuels. And again, we have a significant opportunity there because our energy parks are in the biofuels corridors of Spain. And we aim to deliver, to take leadership when it comes to biofuels, second generation biofuels, waste-based biofuels, not food-based biofuels, to become leaders in waste-based biofuels in Spain by producing 2.5 million tons of biofuels per year by 2030, 0.8 million tons of which will be sustainable aviation fuel. And that could be as much as a third of what Europe needs as a result of the EU Fit for 55 legislation, the mandated amounts. So this will take us not just to leadership in Spain and Portugal, this will make us a European leader when it comes to sustainable aviation fuel. And clearly, we will be phasing out palm oil ahead of new regulation. And clearly, we will be fully decarbonized biofuels using green hydrogen and only organic waste as a feedstock. Now, where is this all going to be produced? Primarily at our energy parks. Our energy parks have the opportunity to become cornerstones of the new economy by becoming sustainable energy infrastructure points around which we will continue to produce the fuel, the traditional fuel that Spain needs as long as it needs it, but increasing quantities and increasing amounts of green fuels will come from there, and over time, the balance will shift towards green. And there's a lot of integration opportunity between the two if you do it well. As you can see here, yes, there will still be crude oil coming in, but we look at biofeedstocks, we look at renewable power, and we will create a mix of energy to help Spain advance, to help Europe advance towards energy security and towards decarbonization. These sites will harness the power of digital by combining the Internet of Things with advanced analytics to become very, very efficient and optimized production sites, so they can be part of that journey to take our carbon footprint down by 55%. These efficient assets in positive motion will make Cepsa an unmissable cornerstone in Europe's energy future. So how about renewable electricity, you might ask? Well, we're going to produce lots of it, but we're going to produce it for own use. Our strategy is not to become an electricity retailer. There are plenty of them in Spain, plenty of them in Portugal. Our strategy is to actually consume a lot of renewable electricity in order to create green hydrogen, in order to serve our own needs, in order to sell lots of e-mobility green electrons to our B2C customers. And in order to do that, we will need up to 7 gigawatts of green power by 2030. 1.5 of which already is mature. It has achieved grid connection. 3 to 4 is on its way, and we expect to be ready to go by 23, 24, 25, and then the rest will top up in the course of the decade. That will put us in control of about 15% of the renewable power production in Spain. But again, I emphasize, this is just to make sure that our fuels and our own use are green. Now that's the transformation of the energy business. let me talk a little bit about the two other strong businesses that Cepsa houses, chemicals and E&P. You've heard us talk about this before, but these businesses have their own business models. They are at different stages in their life cycle. They operate in different markets. And there's limited operational synergies between the various businesses. So we've decided and announced already last year to give these businesses more autonomy so they can really work on a fit-for-purpose basis. Have chemicals use exactly the processes that are competitive in the chemicals industry, whereas EP use the processes that are competitive in the EP industry. So they can become more fit for purpose and agile and maximize the value out of these strong positions. How are we going to do that? Well, in the case of chemicals, we have a fantastic starting point. We are the number one in LOB, which is a key ingredient for laundry surfactants, for washing our clothes. And we're the number two globally in phenol, which is a key building blocks for engineering plastics. On your way here, you will have seen our phenol hidden in all kinds of plastics that serve your life every day. In chemicals, so we are a global leader. And so it's about understanding where the industry is going, which is going on a decarbonization journey itself, and to extend the leadership in that industry. And for that, we have a three-pronged strategy. First of all, we'll go green. Second, we'll get fit. And three, we will grow. Going green means, for example, in our LAB business, starting to use renewable feedstock. Lower carbon, making lower carbon products, and eventually adopting circularity in our processes. Getting fit means tripling our EBITDA from 2019 to 2026, and we're already halfway today. And growing means continuing to invest in our business and in our partnerships to maintain that leadership position. Our E&P business has been very focused on becoming fit, moving its unit cost down while making the most of the positions we have. And there's more to have there. We still think we have another 15% of unit operating cost to go to become really top quartile when it comes to our operations. And that will happen as a result of cost reductions, but also as a result of volume increases. We have some exciting investment opportunities in our operating assets in Abu Dhabi, in Algeria, and Latin America. And we have a world-class exploration opportunity in Suriname. So there's plenty of dynamism going on in E&P. But one of the important things that business will do is double its free cash flow in order to help fund the very ambitious investment program that we're going to talk about in a minute. So positive motion is good news for our stakeholders, for society, for partners, but it's also good news for our shareholders and for our debt holders. There will be substantial cash flow coming out of this business this decade. There will also be substantial investment going into that business, but it's self-funding. So we'll make enough money to pay for our investments. And on the way there, we will continue to have a strong balance sheet, looking for investment-grade profile of our balance sheet. And we have a clear financial framework with a capital allocation strategy that looks for a 15% or more return on average from our investments, which will create value, which create the cash flow in order to continue to grow to 2030 and beyond. So today, we announced an investment of 7 to 8 billion euros this decade in Cepsa. More than 60% of that money going into sustainable projects. And the majority of our investment next year will already be sustainable, going into hydrogen, biofuels, clean mobility, and decarbonization of our energy parks. That investment will generate a strong increase in the sustainable earnings of this company. Our sustainable EBITDA will grow from single digits today to more than half of our earnings before the end of the decade. And that is totally transformative for a company that until today has been making almost all of its money from fossil fuels. So this new Cepsa is going to go beyond net zero, which I think is important because net zero feels a bit like doing less bad. We will become net positive. We will do more good. We will deliver a positive contribution not only to climate change, but also to energy security, the broader environment, employment, equal opportunity, and all the things that matter to our future, to our collective future. We will become a leader in sustainable mobility and sustainable energy, making it easy for our customers, affordable for our customers, convenient for our customer to make the switch to green. And along the way, we will target the #1 position in Portugal and Spain, in ultra-fast charging, in selling green hydrogen, in producing and selling biofuels, and in sustainable aviation fuels. That's the extent of our ambition. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, the time to act is now. Cepsa was there 100 years ago to power the previous energy transition. And today, once again, we boldly step up to invest in this energy transition. We want to restore that positive experience that people have, or used to have, when they bought energy for mobility or for their daily use. 10,000 very talented, very committed and motivated employees can't wait to get going with this strategy, to put their shoulder behind the wheel and to implement positive motion. I'm very excited about what we can achieve this decade. And I invite our customers and our partners and our suppliers to join us on that journey. Because together, we can create a world in positive motion and a brighter future for all. Thank you.
Bueno, pues empezamos este turno de preguntas. Por favor, el que se presente, dar vuestro nombre y el nombre del medio también, para que... Adelante, por favor.
Sí, hola, buenos días. No sé, ¿se me oye bien? Sí, ¿no? Sí. Bueno, buenos días. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I asked my question in Spanish language. For respect for my colleague. En esta semana ha habido varios foros de aviación. Concretamente voy a preguntar sobre el combustible SAF. Ha estado aquí el director general de IATA, Willy Walsh. Estuvo también el presidente de Iberia, con el cual han llegado ustedes a un acuerdo con respecto a la producción de combustible. Hemos sabido que Air Nostrum acaba de firmar también con ustedes un acuerdo para abastecerles de combustible sostenible, combustible SAF, pero todos tenemos el mismo problema, que es el precio que tiene este tipo de combustible, porque es, como bien saben, es 3 veces más caro que el combustible normal que estamos pagando ahora, que ya está excesivamente alta. Es una de nuestras grandes debilidades porque supone más o menos el 27% del coste de la operación. Evidentemente habrá que escalarlo, pero hasta entonces me gustaría saber qué evolución va a tener, porque todo va a depender efectivamente de la producción y cuándo esperan que este precio sea competitivo, porque al final si no vamos a tener que repercutírselo a nuestros clientes. Y entiendo por lo que ha dicho y por lo que acaba de comentar usted, es que España se va a convertir, digamos, para Cepsa, en uno de los sitios principales de producción de combustible sostenible para aviación. Gracias.
No, it's a very important question. So yes, we do plan to indeed become one of the principal producers of sustainable aviation fuel in Europe. The cost of biofuels in general and sustainable aviation fuel is absolutely a theme to work on in the next 25 years. Today, the production happens at small locations that have not been built to scale, often using yesterday's technology. So we do believe that through scale and application of new technology, we will be able to drive down the cost of sustainable aviation fuel and biofuels in general significantly from here. For it to compete with fossil fuels, it needs help. And the help will come from two sides. One is, of course, a high CO2 price. And we do expect the CO2 price in Europe to continue to grow in the coming decades to levels where actually the choice between sustainable aviation fuel and kerosene becomes more obvious. And we depend on regulatory support, such as in the EU for 55, where there are actually blending mandates to get the fuel into get sustainable aviation fuel into the mix. Clearly, over time, the industry needs to keep working on technological and scaling solutions to bring the price down, because otherwise the cost of aviation will become a lot more expensive than it is today, and that couldn't be good news for end consumers. But that's a decadal journey because today very, very little of that product gets produced. But we are committed not just to scaling up, but also to working on the technology to bring the cost down further.
Miguel Ángel.
Hola, soy Miguel Ángel Patiño del diario Expansión. Yo tengo dos preguntas. La primera es que deduzco que al final las renovables que hagáis van a ser para consumo interno, con lo cual descartáis convertiros en un gran operador de renovables para terceros, como están haciendo otras petroleras. Y luego me queda la duda de qué vais a hacer exactamente con la división de química y exploración y producción, porque parece que lo decís aquí como una especie como de clave esotérica, diciendo permanecerá sin cambios y Cepsa dotará de mayor autonomía a estas divisiones con el objetivo de maximizar la creación de valor. ¿Qué quiere decir exactamente eso? ¿Seguís con el plan de venta de la división de química para incorporar socios nuevos, incluso si ese plan de venta de la división de química también se ha ampliado a la división de exploración y producción? Gracias.
Let me take the second question immediately, and then I'll ask Juan just to make sure that I understood the first one right. On your second question, what increased autonomy means is that we want these businesses, to a large extent, to be able to make their own choices on exactly what kind of processes they deploy in order to make their business competitive, which will help them become more agile and more competitive in their own industries, because there are relatively few synergies between those businesses and the energy business. To your question, we have announced, I think in October last year, that we were considering the strategic alternatives for chemicals, and that is a process that is ongoing with all the options still on the table. And so we will tell you when we conclude that process, but we haven't concluded yet. And we are not in such a process for EMP at the moment. So in the case of EMP, this is all about making sure that they can run their business in a fit-for-purpose way, and in a way that is suitable for an EMP company, rather than one that puts all kinds of extra burdens on that company, on that business that it doesn't need to do what it needs to do.
Okay,
And the first?
The first question, what he meant is that it seems as though most of our renewable production is going to be dedicated to self-consumption. And he wanted to know whether we are discarding to like other companies are like selling to third parties or becoming utilities indirectly.
No, thanks. It's an important question, because some of our customers will actually want a complete package of energy. They will want to buy from us diesel, hydrogen, and clean power. And of course, we will be able to serve those customers with the full energy needs they have. But we are not investing large amounts of money to sell renewable power into to the merchant market. But we will be able to serve customers that want the electricity from us. We do have actually a 24/7 dispatch operation here in the tower. And so we do not exclude doing it, but it's not the major strategic thrust. It is to be able to serve customers that want a complete package from us.
Rodrigo from Bloomberg.
Hello, Rodrigo Orihuela from Bloomberg. How are you doing? Two questions. One, with hydrogen and biofuels, when or what kind of time frame do you have for when it will be a significant part of your actual earnings, of your profits? Because there wasn't anything on that. And the second question I had is on the hydrogen sites. I think you said you were going to develop 100 filling sites, but I'm not sure if that's the correct number. And if all these sites will be at existing filling stations, or you will build new stations specifically dedicated for hydrogen?
Thank you. To your second question, yeah, the number of 100 is indeed the number of distribution points of hydrogen for transport that we would aim to have by the end of the decade in Spain and Portugal. It's possible that we will end up extending these chains into Europe, either by ourselves or through partnerships, but that's the extent of our planned footprint in Iberia. Not all of it will necessarily be on our own stations. I think the majority will. But for large clients, we may well build hydrogen distribution points where they need it, either on their own premises or in a place that is convenient for them to fill up. So So some of that network will probably be specific hydrogen. Most of it will be general, which interestingly could also start then to serve cars and bring light transport back into hydrogen, which of course at the moment is quite battery vehicle focused. One of the exciting things I think we're announcing today is that we expect more than half of our EBITDA to be sustainable before the end of the decade. And that requires a significant contribution from biofuels and hydrogen, because e-mobility from our stations, however many customers buy an EV car, is not going to do the job. So we need all those three sources, biofuels, hydrogen and e-mobility, to be scaled businesses well before the end of the decade. So we'll need to get on with it in order to achieve that objective, but we're very passionate about doing it.
Sí, hola. Buenas, José María Camarero, de Colpisa. Yo tenía dos preguntas, una a largo plazo y otra a corto plazo. A largo plazo, con esta crisis por la guerra en Ucrania, ¿prevén que la Unión Europea pueda modificar su estrategia precisamente sostenible, acelerándola o retrasándola un poco dependiendo de la situación que pueda ocurrir? Pues eso, de cara a 2030 y a los objetivos de 2030, y cómo podría impactar en el sentido positivo o negativo en el plan estratégico, dependiendo de lo que pueda decidir la Unión Europea. Y a corto plazo, no sé qué perspectivas tienen de hasta cuándo se puede prolongar esta crisis actual, si más allá de lo que se pensaba inicialmente o no. Gracias.
No, thanks. I think in terms of the longo plazo question, I think there are some competing pressures. It is clear that Europe is much more concerned about energy independence and energy security than it was 2 months ago. And that will be, I think, a significant driver to step up the development of locally produced hydrogen, locally produced biofuels, and locally produced renewable power, which is exactly our strategy. So I think that there will be an urgency to speed up. I think the slightly counterbalancing point will be that the question is, will there be any money left to actually invest in this from the government's point of view? Now, we have our own organic strategy to put our money into this, so we will continue with that. But of course, the energy transition at large, in terms of networks, in terms of help to customers, needs an investment as well. And so I think these are somewhat counterbalancing powers. My sense is that with climate change already being a very important priority, and now energy security and independence, that threat will actually be the dominant one, and that we will change faster rather than more slowly as a result of this crisis. The question, how long will this all last, is of course the one where I probably don't have a better answer than you. We absolutely hope that this will end very, very soon. There are only losers in this in the current situations. All customers in Europe, but for sure the citizens of Ukraine. And so we hope it will get resolved soon, and we are working very, very hard to cushion the blow for our partners and customers. As you will have picked up, on last Friday we announced a 10-cent discount to our fuels customers in Spain, both professional and B2C, for a period of 3 months. And I think in that way we're trying to do our bit to soften the blow of what is clearly a very, very difficult situation. Online. Okay, we'll take a few questions online.
This ABC from Sevilla asking about the future of the BOP project.
Yeah. Okay. So Cepsa has had as a long-standing project called Bottom of the Barrel in the San Roque refinery in near Gibraltar, and we have recently announced that we will stop that project in our annual accounts, but maybe it's not being picked up by everyone. So that project will not continue. It was a large billion-dollar investment in our refinery there. We believe that is no longer a suitable project for us to proceed with. Clearly, our refineries will be relevant for quite some time to come, but we prefer to spend our investment dollars in biofuels and hydrogen going forward, and no longer making these kinds of investment in upgrading our refinery. So that project is stopped.
Another question, a little more concrete and technical. How many ultra charges? When are you going to have these ultra charges that you mentioned before?
So
how many?
Yeah, so we're starting the rollout of our ultra fast chargers in the second quarter. We will ramp up quickly to 20 a week, and we will stay at 20 a week for a long time, basically for as long as it takes to build that leadership position, and for as long as it takes for all our customers to have a charging experience that is without any concern.
Ramón y luego Ayla from Reuters. Ramón.
Hola, buenas. Soy Ramón Roca del periódico La Energía. Por su experiencia en anteriores trabajos, su conocimiento del mercado europeo, quería saber si cree que podría haber un poco de racionamiento, digamos, del diésel en Europa. Está habiendo problemas del suministro de diésel desde distintos mercados hacia este viejo continente que es Europa, y quería saber si podríamos tener problemas en las próximas semanas o meses de suministro de diésel en Europa, si sabe a lo mejor algo de otros colegas.
No, thank you. The diesel supply to Europe depends significantly on diesel coming from Russia, both as an intermediate grade, which is called vacuum gas oil, but also as a final grade that is delivered from Russian refineries into Europe. Today, those flows continue, but not at the same rate as they used to, and therefore the diesel price is somewhat elevated. If today's flows continue, then I think the major impact is simply high diesel prices, because Europe will eventually start to import diesel from other parts of the world, from the Middle East, from Asia, and that is actually already starting to happen. In a scenario where the Russian diesel flows get stopped completely, I think it will be hard to respond in the moment to import enough diesel from the rest of the world. So you could get into that position. We are working hard to make sure that our networks are supplied, our refineries running as fast and hard as they can to produce all the diesel that we can, and we are definitely on the lookout for import cargoes as they get offered to make sure our supply situation does not get compromised.
Bueno, vamos a coger un par de preguntas antes de ir acabando. Primero, Ayla.
Hola, Alberto Sanz de Voz Populi. Quería preguntarte lo primero, en las últimas semanas, ultimando el plan estratégico, has tenido una agenda muy completa con el gobierno español. Quería saber cómo puede influir los cambios regulatorios que pone en marcha el gobierno y si han tenido que hacer alguna matización de última hora en un plan en el que se concentra sobre todo en este mercado y en Portugal. Y una segunda pregunta es con respecto a los descuentos que van a tener que aplicar al combustible. Si ustedes ya han contactado con su red de gasolineras y con los diferentes trabajadores para detallarles cómo van a ser estos descuentos que van a tener que aplicar desde este mismo viernes, y saber si ya han estimado, si ya han hecho un cálculo de cómo impactará en sus cuentas los diferentes descuentos con las previsiones de precios que tenían. Muchas gracias.
No, thank you very much. Let me take the second question first, which is this morning we've received a 160-page document that details how these discounts are going to work. And you will forgive me for not having read it yet, preparing for today's announcements, etc. So we are working through the instructions that we've been given. And working through how to implement them together with our dealers, and with our own network. So I can't give you much detail on that at the moment, other than clearly it will get into force on 1 April, and we will have some teams working 24/7, or at least 24 hours in the coming 2 days, in order to understand and implement the regulation. It will clearly push prices down for our customers, which is good news. Exactly the mechanism, exactly how it will work, I'm sure it's in the 160 pages, but I haven't been able to consume and understand them yet, so we'll get back to that.
Las últimas preguntas ya, 2 preguntas, por favor.
There was another question.
Yeah, there was the first question.
There was one more question on regulation.
Yeah.
Clearly, we are on hydrogen and biofuels. The regulation in Europe is still forming itself, and the regulation in Spain is still forming itself. And I think that will be a somewhat iterative process to find out together what exactly works, how can we develop the right regulation to decarbonize transport, industry, fertilizers, etc. It all becomes a bit specific. We have strong networks into other European countries to learn what works there and what doesn't. We offer that to the Spanish government, our own recommendations and learnings. And we feel there's a great receptivity there because the government is together with us on trying to make these green fuels available rapidly to Spanish industry and to Spanish consumers. So I think that's a very complementary effort. But clearly, eventually, the regulation will be set by the government. We can only make proposals.
Hello, I'm Ayla Binney from Reuters News Agency. Thank you very much for taking the questions. I wanted to just quickly clarify something, which forgive me if I misunderstood here. But on the question about diesel supplies, you said that there was a possible scenario where we could get into that position. Could I just check to what position we were referring there in terms of potential diesel shortages in Europe? And then my Cepsa specific question was about this concept of net positive. Could we have a little bit more detail on what you mean by being net positive, carbon positive by 2050? Are we talking about carbon capture or other kinds of technological solutions or nature-based solutions? And then one other kind of really small factual thing is when you say that the E&P strategy is unchanged, does that mean that you foresee no changes to production?
Thank you. No, I foresee indeed no significant changes to production, although our production is up this year compared to last because the OPEC quota have become less and less of an issue, and we're hopeful that it will roll away as the year progresses and the world continues to need OPEC to step up. To your question about diesel, what I mean to say with it is that if there is a sudden rupture of diesel supply from Russia one day to the other because of sanctions or because of other decisions, it will be very hard to keep the physical diesel market balanced in Europe on that day. Clearly, it will trigger a flow of imports into Europe, so over time there will be enough diesel in the world. But to redirect the physical flows of diesel to cater for the Russian supply falling away will take a little bit of time to calibrate. And in that period of time, you could see diesel supply being inadequate for the current levels of consumption. Your first...
Bueno, pues
that was it,
la
right?
última, esta ya es la última y ya vamos a dar por finalizada la rueda de prensa.
Buenos días, Laura Blanco de Capital Radio. Aunque tengan que leer la letra pequeña del anuncio del Gobierno, ¿qué valoración hace usted? ¿Qué le parece que el Gobierno decida que las petroleras asuman parte de la subida de los costes de los carburantes? Y esta pregunta sobre la crisis quisiera ligarla con una reflexión. ¿Cree usted que se precipitaron las autoridades al exigir a las compañías energéticas reducir sus inversiones en infraestructuras para combustibles fósiles? Y ya respecto al plan, si nos puede dar algún detalle de cómo se va a financiar. Gracias.
I will start to answer, and if I miss something, then let me know. I think what is important is that the market in which we operate is in principle a deregulated market. But in times of crisis, I think we all need to step up and play our role in trying to manage the crisis, and doing it as much as possible through a conversation and by working together. But it will be important that we restore the principles of the deregulated industry as soon as we can. I believe that is also what the government wants to do, but I totally understand that in a time of crisis, that interventions are made, and interventions are made as much as possible on the basis of discussions and agreements rather than unilaterally imposed, and that's our experience with this one. We have gone early last week with our announcement for our customers because we believed it was important to give people some hope that some good news on petroleum price was on the way. We will over time, of course, need to manage this because we have a business to run and we have large investments to make, but we need to balance the needs of the society with the needs of our investment program, and that's exactly what we're doing at the moment.
Muy bien. Pues damos por finalizada esta rueda de prensa. Muchísimas gracias por haber venido. Al final han sido 80 medios de comunicación los que han seguido esta rueda de prensa. Muchas gracias de nuevo.
Gracias a todos.